Hey, welcome back to another episode of Success Leaves Clues. I'm here with two very special guests. One, Tiffany Sauder, who CEO of Element 3, a large marketing company right here in town. I think Fortune was a 5,000 fastest growing companies list numerous times. 40 under 40. We share a lot of similarities. Also members of YPO. And we have a special event coming up with Brian Stevenson talking about just embracing culture and our differences and how we can kind of help one another out. And we have Stan Pathak here of
AfterSchool HQ.
AfterSchool HQ, a tech company here in town locally, also advisor at Element 3. And we're going to talk about you all relationship, right, over the past few years, how it kind of developed and what it is now, right? And how you saw him as an opportunity to help someone chase their dreams.
Yep, absolutely.
So starting off, like how long have you guys known each other?
Do you want to do timeline? You're better at
that. Yeah, so 2016, I was consulting, just kind of in between jobs. And I hooked up with Element 3 towards the end of 2016 in Q4. Met Tiffany in is around December, September, sometime around that Q4 time period, and started officially at Element 3 January 1st, 2017.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And Tiff, Element 3, like what exactly, like when we talk about marketing company, right, there's a lot of just marketing companies, right? But you're unique in like your approach. So tell us a little bit about Element 3 and what you all do.
Yeah, so we transform brands and generate demand. So if you are looking for a new, fresh way to tell your story to the marketplace, we're really good at that. And then we're also really good at taking that story, that unique sort of point of perspective, and making sure that we're helping business owners, heads of VP of marketing, make sure that it's actually generating market impact, getting clients through the demand generation activities.
That's amazing. So when you guys first met, what was your initial role in Element 3?
I came in as a VP of technology.
Okay.
So Element 3 was working and kind of started creating custom software to solve really niche marketing issues. And so just needed somebody who understood the tech space a little bit more in depth, and that's my background, it's in technology. So I came in initially as the VP of technology.
All right, awesome. And how did that kind of evolve into being a CEO and kind of helping you out and putting in a system to help scale your company?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, we really were the lucky ones in this whole formula. I mean, we tell the story in a very nice and tidy way now.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, like, we were in a hot mess. We had gotten over our skis as a company. We had said yes to some projects under very noble pretenses for clients. But the truth of the matter is it was a mess. And we actually, I would say, didn't even have the expertise to make a really good hire. Like, how when you don't know a thing, you can really get hosed and make a bad hire. And we got super lucky because we were so unprepared to even know how good Sam was. When we hired him, I mean, we sort of hoped he was good.
Right.
but he really needed to be good.
Yeah.
And it really was the perfect, he not only had the technical competency to help us unknot this big mess, but the X factor for us was that he was so calm under pressure. It was unconscionable. It was unbelievable how, we literally, it was one of our largest clients. It was high risk every single minute. And the chances of being successful were remarkably low. I just need to be real of he didn't start with this neat little tidy job description job description where we were to the moon and back. It was a mess.
Right.
And that was what he came into, and we didn't even know how to help him. It was you're kind of alone with yourself, and we're sorry about that, but we're really glad you're here.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
That's kind of how it started. And I think what I've seen in Sam is that he's such a competent solver. And so that was what I think I would say I recognized, but there was a shared recognition in our company and some of my advisors that it was really just about figuring out what challenge to put in front of Sam. And we started to really stretch the sandbox of things, including putting him at one point in our CFO role. of which, and I don't say this to discredit all of your competency, but he didn't know the difference necessarily between debits and credits, and like the technical part of accounting, he didn't know at all when we said, let's see if he can do this role. And like in 8 weeks, he had essentially self-taught himself accounting. He's so humble and resourceful when it comes to like putting himself in the path of people who can teach him things. I really admire that about Sam too. And so my job was just to like kind of find the hairiest hairball and like put it in front of him and say like, good luck with yourself.
That's amazing.
That's how we got from there to him being COO.
So from your perspective, saying like coming into a company, like did you feel like it was in disarray? Did you?
Exactly.
You gotta be real.
I was definitely given like the PG-13 version, but
of course.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. But my background being in engineering, and I've been in charge of engineering departments. So when I came in Element 3, that actually wasn't the difficult part, cleaning up this issue that we had with the development lifecycle process and talking to the client. But my background's not in business finance. My background is strictly like I've done firmware development, I've done mobile app development, I've done all that stuff. But what I've learned is that I can kind of pick up anything that I need to pick up to be successful in a role. So when Tiffany started giving me opportunities, the second one was becoming the VP of operations and just kind of being in charge of like our project management squad. And then after that, I had the opportunity to become the CFO because our CFO resigned.
Right.
And we were very deliberate about that because, as you know, we implemented EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And we were looking for, basically me to fill that integrator role, so that Tiffany could fully step into the visionary role. And then this whole piece about, business finance, that's critical to the success of the business. So me being able to pick that up gave me like the last tool in my toolbox that I needed to really run the company so that she can be free in the visionary role. And I'd say that whole partnership of, visionary integrator pair, it like really brought us, I think, it forced us to take our relationship to a very transparent place.
No, that's awesome. So when that transition happened, right, he's CFO, he finally learned the debits and the credit side, right? So things are looking good now, right? So transitioned into the integrator role.
I'm not going to live that down. I don't know the difference between debit and credit. I come use a debit card, credit card.
I see that like functionally you didn't know, but you were fearless. I think I got to tell the Noodle Boiling Story, and then we'll go to your question. So like I am the difference between a jet engine and a locomotive. Like a jet engine goes fast, but you have to put fuel in it sort of all the time. It never gets its own inertia. Like that's me. And he's like a locomotive, and that like he's gonna go further faster with less fuel and ultimately win. But I like and he was fixing these problems. Like Sam, it's like watching you boil one noodle at a time. This is like. It's just infuriating me. I need you to pour the whole damn bag in and get the noodles done in 7 minutes and then move on with your life. And he's like, he looks at me. I don't know that you said any words. You just sort of let me be in my pain. Yeah. And like 3 months later, I was like, I get your noodle boiling. I get what you do. You dissect a problem. You patiently watch until you really understand what's happening. And then you systematically make change. Where I come in and like, whack things around like a ninja and like it's a different mess when I leave but still a mess but it feels cleaner to me and so I had to really learn to respect that, and I think you stood your ground kind of without saying anything. I don't even know if you said anything. I think you were just
I remember you telling me.
I don't know what to say.
I remember you saying that, and I was in my car. I was like, man, I'm a noodle boiler now.
It's like watching you take one piece of pasta out and be like, I think this was. But we got so far. It was so important, and I now just like I respect it, and I gravitate towards people who are like that because I just see the value in the discipline. So I really learned that from them. So now we can go to your question.
So the one thing, like as a CEO, I always say. Your goal should be, I'm stubborn about my goals and flexible about my methods. Like you're hiring people and you're delegating tasks that they're capable of accomplishing, but they're not going to do it the way that you're going to do it. But it doesn't matter. The job is not to do it the way you do it. The job is to get it done. So like having that patience and having that foresight as a CEO to kind of release that, because a lot of times visionaries, we should not be CEOs, right? Because we don't have enough attention to detail to stick in those problems and solve them in that systematic way. So kudos to you both for just recognizing that about yourself. So
well, I think that's a great segue actually to your question about our relationship, is to give people watching this some perspective. For really 14, 15 years, this was my baby. I mean, I started this company. I had given it too much of my life in seasons. I had my 4 babies, like on maternity leave, and it was like, this thing is my DNA. And so getting to a place where somebody says, you know, EOS or whatever it is, like, hey, you really need somebody different than you to run the day-to-day, I knew I wasn't doing a great job. Like, I actually was fine admitting that to myself, but trusting somebody, and I think trusting somebody so different than yourself, it's not like we saw one another in each other. And so he's different in the way that he thinks. He's a boy, I'm a girl.
Yeah.
He's black, I'm white. Like there was a lot of differences, and so he had a massive amount of I think respect for that. You had a lot of ownership and pride in your job, and so you wanted to know you were actually going to be set up for success, like that I was actually going to step aside and let him do it. And I needed to know that I could sort of trust, not just like was he smart, but like at that level you need to know somebody's character. Like you need to know their heart, you need to know their DNA, you need to know that in every moment you could screw me, that you never will. And that ultimately was, I think, a decision we both had to make of, you knew you had to understand and be the ultimate decoder ring for what was in my head to step into that role. And I had to be able to turn my back and go do other things in full confidence that he was never going to knowingly hurt me.
Wow.
And that, I think, was I think we both knew that. I don't know that we ever said those words to each other, but we both knew that that was critical for this whole thing to be successful.
So we talked about the differences, right? Obviously male, female, black, white, right? Probably context of guy, like how you grew up. So what do you think was like one of the biggest ones? I mean, last year, I think, what was it, 2019, you accepted role, 2020, the pandemic, all the social unrest, all those things are coming to a boil. So I'm sure that had to play into part as you're growing the company, trying to figure out, the world issues, right? You can't just live in the silo. They affect you as an organization. So how do those differences kind of foster up, and how did you guys solve for that?
Yeah, I mean, so prior to 2020, there are instances that occurred at Element 3. I grew up on the East Coast.
Where about?
In Maryland.
Okay, I'm from Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, yeah, so when I came to Element 3, I remember initially having a conversation where I was sitting in a conference room with a glass wall, basically, so we're looking at the company. Person that interviewed me said, "What do you think about our culture?" And I was like, "Oh, it seems pretty laid back." But I kind of understood what she was asking me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be the only black person that works here.
Right.
It's not abnormal, you know what I'm saying? Because when you get to a certain level, you just find yourself being the only person of color.
Yeah.
So it's something I was used to. And I'm not about to talk about that in an interview. Like, I'm just not going to go that far, transparent. But I understood what she was saying, and I appreciated it. So there have been instances leading up to 2020 in my time as being the integrator where I felt very offended by things. And I never said it, you know what I'm saying? I didn't feel comfortable enough, and I didn't have the relationship. I didn't want to take that risk to have the relationships at work to tell somebody like, "Hey man, this offended me. That wasn't cool what you said." But in order for us to, we've done a lot of reading, like Jim Collins books and things like that. I've noticed that all these successful companies, one of the reasons why they're so successful is because their leadership team doesn't have those walls. Like, they have no walls with each other. They're genuinely have these genuine relationships, and that's what allows the trust. Because Tiffany she has to let go of a vine, allow me to run the company, and trust me. and I need to trust her, and so there can't be any of this like unresolved, issues, right? So it did lead me to a place where I had a conversation with Tiffany beginning of, I think it was 2020 or 2019, where I started the conversation. And so that led us to reading books and things like that together and having more transparent conversations. But in 2020, you're dealing with all of this social unrest, right? And so these aren't things that, we see for the first time on TV. It's like, this is the stuff that I grew up with. And then now as social media is like just kind of blown up over the past really 10 years, you see it's not isolated to where you grew up. It's just like literally something that's going on all around. So I got to a point, similarly to a lot of people, right when George Floyd was killed, that I was like, all right, I'm really struggling. And so I had to just be very transparent with the whole exec team about that. So I sent an email and I said, look, here's how I'm feeling. I'm struggling with this whole thing. And I got a lot of support from the exec team, and Tiffany gave me a lot of support during that time. So it led to more transparent conversations, and I think that moment, I would say, kind of has permanently changed Element 3.
Man, that's great. So Tiff, you're in your home, you're at office, you see that email come across, like what? How did you feel about that?
Well, I was really glad that he felt comfortable to send it, but if I'm honest, the thing that my relationship with Sam has allowed is for me to be really open about how naive I am. And I needed to be able to say that to somebody, because as a leader, you feel like your job is to be prepared for every situation. And I had no way to contextually be prepared for what was going to happen in 2020. He grew up on the East Coast in the city. I grew up in the Midwest in a very rural agrarian environment. And it wasn't that you even had the opportunity to be racist. There just literally wasn't diversity. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, I didn't even notice that. That is how normal it was. And I don't think that's my fault. That's just functionally the environment that I grew up in. And so as an adult, when you start to realize that life has brought you in such a way where your path is that you need to have a really high trust relationship with somebody who is nothing like you, and you come from really different places, that's sort of the day of reckoning for all of that. And if he would not have been patient and created space for me to be able to be wholly honest about that, and it not be about him personally, and having grace for me to be able to do what I was doing out of a genuine motive, but was coming across as hurtful, I never would have had a moment to be able to learn and get better and to grow and to be able to sort of change generationally for my family the things that they have context for. And that's okay, that's important, but that's why I'm so passionate about trust and relationship being really, I think, the seed that has to be planted for us to be able to change the face of what race relations look like, and our ability to be able to impact the trajectory of one another's lives has to start with that. And Sam has been so gracious about bringing me into his world. I sort of, another sort of notorious Tiffany comment in our relationship was, I was like, you don't hang out with white people? It's like, no. I was like, I totally pictured there were white people in your backyard.
At the barbecue, like,
so I was like, I mean,
they can put raisin in the potato salad.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I felt stupid that I needed to, like, I'm like, that's what I pictured.
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, oh, like, okay, like, but I do feel like he has brought me into his world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's introduced me to his friends. He's introduced me to his network. He's introduced me to people that he is really a champion for professionally, and so I can champion them, and vice versa. And I think if I just feel like you and I's relationship will be ground zero for a lot of the genealogy of what can happen in our respective networks and families. And I'm really proud of that.
No, that's awesome. So he's invited you to the barbecue.
We are. I haven't been to his backyard yet. Effectively.
Okay, respectively.
I know. I feel like I know a few more people in his phone than I do.
Right. What would you bring off subject? What would you bring to a barbecue if you went to a barbecue? What would you bring?
I mean, I feel like I'd probably bring like baked beans.
Baked beans.
Is that good?
That's okay.
No.
That's
Okay,
respectful. Just with some brown sugar in there.
It
Yeah,
would
you
be
can get it with some baked
with
beans.
like crunchy bacon.
Yeah.
Soft bacon. No bacon.
Brown sugar.
Yeah,
Brown
just,
sugar. Sweet. Very
Sweet,
sweet.
yeah.
Yeah, very sweet.
yeah. Good question.
Not good. But I think
Corn muffins.
I mean, if you called them corn muffins,
No.
you probably would get stopped.
What am I
But
gonna
if
call
you just
them?
called it corn bread,
Jiffy.
then you get let in.
You get let in.
Okay.
So the interesting part.
Muffins gives you out of a white girl. You're like
Muffins, corn muffins?
Yeah.
Nah. Barbecue's
Yeah.
canceled.
Change the time.
But I think the interesting piece is just like, and in a YPO, right? Same thing, like predominantly, male, predominantly white, right? And then in a lot of different organizations, it's the same. And I think 2020 allowed leaders to listen to understand as opposed to listen to respond.
Oh wow, I agree with you.
And it's such a difference in listen to understand. And I use this example all the time. If I draw 6 on the ground, I'll be standing at a 6 and you'll be standing at a 9. And we're both right. But until I show you my 6, until you show me your 9, we're both going to be at odds on, who's correct. And there could be a thing where we're both correct. And until we have those conversations and have that understanding, and like when you have that trust, you can totally be vulnerable. Like, this is like ignorance. I admit this, but I have no clue what this means. And I think that being vulnerable, I think, is how we get to a situation where, transitioning to now what your current role is and your current relationship is, where you have the trust because you have your own company that you started out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the company's called AfterSchool HQ. We really launched big in 2018 with IPS Athletics. And so we focus on, our goal is to just help kids get involved in after-school programs so they can explore, find their calling, be successful in their career path. So we offer a platform to schools to help manage their after-school programming, and we can easily bring in new programs. So we launched in 2018 with IPS Athletics, and I've been kind of working on, I was working on that prior to coming to Element 3. And it had its inception back at a custom software dev shop I worked at. I was the VP of technology for. And there was a principal that hired us to actually create the software for her. The day we launched it, parents just slammed it and like signing their kids up like crazy for clubs. And at her school, she has like 70% of the kids participating in after-school programs. National average is 18%. So she's doing really, really good. So we're like, all right, we got something here. Let's rebuild it as a SaaS platform and take it to more schools. So that's what we've been working on. So I've been kind of working on that as a co-founder on the side the entire time I was at Element 3.
Wow, that's amazing. And what other type of after-school programs do you provide? Like, what type of programs are there specifically?
So we're kind of like an aggregator or a channel, if you will. We don't provide any, although we've been thinking about creating one ourselves that we put in all the schools. But it's anything. Like, I've seen skateboarding club, ceramics club. We do athletics as well. So obviously, like, we do all of IPS's athletics. But I've just seen coding, dance, everything. Like, I've just seen so many different things on there.
So you're just a platform that allows.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if you do a coding program and you want to get into more schools to offer computer science, then you would sign up on our platform, and we'd help to get you into schools, because it's really difficult, even for folks that have good credentials, to get their club into schools. It's kind of a lot of red tape.
So are you responsible then to find the programmers, and then you're responsible to like put them inside of the school systems?
We just work with like some of them are like just small businesses.
Okay.
Like Code Black, for example. He's got a coding computer science program he does for kids, a website, he does his thing, and he wants to get into more schools. So I just work with him. He signs up on our platform, and then I just connect him. Actually, the platform itself allows you to request to be at a school, and then the person at the school that we have a relationship can approve them. Now his program is showing up on the school's profile page, so that when parents go to sign up, they see this coding program. They can just sign up their kids for it.
Man, that's awesome. That's great. So Tiff, how do you feel, right? You're You bring in a COO, he's an integrator, makes your life so much easier. But he has this side business that he's running on the side. Like, how do you feel as a CEO, like knowing that?
Well, I think that it goes back to trust and transparency. It was courageous, I think, for him to tell me that his ultimate dream was not to be at Element 3 for the rest of his life, but it was to go do something and to be an entrepreneur and to see if he could do what I was doing at Element 3. And he realized his role at that time was to facilitate my vision well, but he also, God had sort of put a vision of Stance inside his own heart. And so I think he had a nod and an acknowledgement that at some point that's what he was going to go do. And that took a lot of courage. And I think that the fact that he was very honest with me about it from day one, it wasn't a surprise, and we could plan together for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately experienced that as a huge sign of respect of him to me, that he trusted me with his whole truth in that, and understood that we were going to have to do this in a way that everything could win. And so that's what we did. I mean, he's transitioned out into an advisor role for us in July of this year. It's been an incredibly seamless transition for us as a company. He'd identified somebody to come into that role behind him. We're very equipped to step into that and do a great job from day one. What a legacy to leave at Element 3 for Stan.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had an opportunity as a company to make a financial investment in AfterSchool HQ, and I think you would consider us some of your advisors too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm helping them with some brand strategy, and so we still get a chance to really like solve together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool that while he's not a W-2 employee anymore of Element 3, we still get to really solve big things together. We still get to be able to sort of let both these dreams live inside of the same, ecosystem, and that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love the quote, like, the goal of leadership is to create more leaders instead of more followers.
It can be scary though. It's
no question.
It can be really scary. I remember, because you're right when you say that was solved for me.
Mm-hmm.
Him being the interior, that was like check, problem solved,
right.
And him wanting to go do something else meant that check mark was going to come off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
It's a big check mark.
Yeah, it's a real big check mark in my life, and so it's. It has not been a perfect road, but I feel like the reason this has been able to be so smooth is because the trust and transparency was a paramount part of our relationship.
Man, that's awesome. So we talked a little bit about obviously the relationship, him going a startup. You need capital,
mm-hmm.
right? And access to capital for a minority company is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
So can you talk about some of those challenges that you experienced just trying to raise capital on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to 2019, the founder is my brother-in-law. His name is Darie. We were standing on his porch and we're like, hey, we gotta raise some money. It's getting to the point where we have something, but we can't take it any further without some cash investment. So between the two of us, I'm a bit better at like sales and pitches.
Yeah.
So anyways, I went out and started doing some pitches and talking to friends. But the way it kind of works with startups is, you have this bootstrapping phase. If you've never done a startup before and you don't have like a reputation, you got to go through a bootstrapping phase. It's like sweat equity, long nights, just building it, working another job, trying to figure out how you're gonna put food on the table, all that kind of stuff. And then you get something, and then you get some early traction with a couple of customers, which we had. We got into an accelerator, which was great. Developer Town starts, fantastic. Love the everything that they brought to the table, and they're continuing to bring things to the table. But then once you kind of get through that, you got to raise the friends and family round.
Mm.
So that was where we got stuck. So basically, there's this thing called an accredited investor. It's a kind of a stipulation for being able to do an investment in a company. There's also something called Regulation CF, which is crowdfunding.
Okay.
And that's another route, just for listeners. If you're stuck, check into Regulation CF.
Okay.
With platforms like Republic or Start Engine. But anyway, so we're trying to raise money. I had a friend, one of my friends in DC. He's like, yeah, I want to put some money into it. And I was like, oh, bet. So I go back to our advisor and I'm like, I need the paperwork. Can you give me the paperwork? I need you to sign it. Let's go. Got some money. So he starts walking through it and he's like, he's like this accredited investor questionnaire. I was like, yeah, so what's that? And then he starts explaining, you know, you have to buy yourself for $200,000, join $300,000, or have a net worth of $1 million. I'm sitting there like, so you mean to tell me all of these people that are investing in all these portfolio companies at this round all make that kind of money and have a net worth of $1 million? That's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. I don't have friends and family like that.
Right.
So we're stuck. We did work up some paperwork so we can accept that, but so a little bit later, Tiffany, she calls me. She's like, yeah, I have a friend who would like to hear your pitch. I'm like, all right, cool. So I pitch him, and I was at the beach actually on vacation, but I'm like, nah, I don't care what's going on.
Yeah, no question.
If somebody's interested, I'm gonna be there. So yeah, so it was like at the beach, and my family was like headed to the beach. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I gotta take a call, and so I took the call, pitched, and he wanted to invest a substantial amount of money. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. I was trying to be cool on the phone, but I was really excited.
Yeah.
So anyways, moving forward, he's like, I would like you to pitch my exec team as well. So I did. They wanted to invest a substantial amount of money. And then he starts bringing his network to the table. So Tiffany didn't realize it, but she opened the door to a network of angel investors, essentially. Private investors that can give us startup capital. And then on the heels of that, we were able to actually raise a good amount of VC capital for our seed round. So yeah, that's that.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did you feel like when you saw like the impact you were able to make, like in his life and his company?
Well, I mean, it's really cool. I don't know that it's even me. I think it's about just being aware. Again, it goes back to his vulnerability, his willingness to be like, I'm failing at this. I'm really struggling. I don't know that we're going to get there. And I think me realizing that was probably the only thing I could bring to the table for him. And it was about timing. I kind of knew who I thought in my network would be connected to what he was trying to do. I was strategic about the timing that not on his timing, but just sort of the other people's timing of when I sort of felt like there was going to be receptivity to it. And I really think those people who are accredited investors have to realize that like your money, well placed in the hands of helping to create Black entrepreneurs who so that in the future his kids don't say, I don't have accredited investors in my friends and family. Like we have a chance to change that. But it's not going to be through programs, and it's not going to be through, it's going to be like actually putting our money behind it. And that's why investing in AfterSchool HQ was so critical for me, was I can't just wish him well.
Yeah.
Like I really believe in what they're doing, and so I need to make it hurt a little bit. Yeah. I need to actually put some skin in the game, so I'm paying attention, so that I continue to bring my network to bear, and I don't just sort of passively cheer them on from the sidelines, which frankly is much simpler.
Yeah.
It's
amazing. It always feels like, people think it's someone else's problem.
Totally.
Yeah.
Or like you hang around with people and like, oh, I gave to the Boys and Girls Club, or I gave this donation to this. Yeah, it's a 501c3, and the public you get from it is going to be more than actually putting it.
Right.
So it's actually a marketing spin.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, like I always say, how can you help? Like help someone. Mm-hmm. Like don't give $1 million, make a millionaire. Mm-hmm. If you want to help, like this inclusive world, or you gotta support, you gotta make it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Totally, and in my head, I look at same thing for women. It's a different journey, but a similar one. And I have told myself in my heart, if I can make one Black millionaire and one other successful female business owner, I will have not done it, but support them intentionally. I will have done what I needed to. And if we all make one,
that's it.
It changes our society so fast. And so I do think there was a moment where I started to realize I personally can change this, and I took ownership for my role in the problem. I took ownership for the impact I could have in changing it, and that was all intrinsic. Sam never forced that on me. He never asked that of me. I believe firmly he would have found another door that opened for him if it wouldn't have been this one. I really do. I just feel like I got an opportunity to be the helpful one, but I don't believe I was magic thing. I
Right.
think he would have found another door. I just happened to be able to open one.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I think definitely just wanted to wrap it up. I mean, obviously, thanks for you both for coming on, sharing your journey, right? I think it's important that we're more transparent because, you know, relationships are messy, companies are messy, but, you know, two people working it out that don't necessarily look the same, think the same, it could create something beautiful. And that's what you guys have created. So the name of the podcast is Success Leaves Clues. So this in every episode, just and I start with you, Tiff, first. Just like, what kind of clue would you kind of share if someone's listening? So they're a CEO, you know, they have an opportunity to kind of make a difference. Like, what kind of clue would you share with them that could kind of impact their lives?
I would say lean into the thing that you don't want to do. I wanted race not to be a thing in our relationship.
Right.
That was the simplest path for me. I just wanted it not to be something that we needed to like unpack, uncover. I was like, let's just be friends. How about that? And it needed to be for there to be trust. And if I'm honest with myself, I didn't want to have to go down that road. And likely one of the most important roads I traveled.
That's amazing. I try to educate people when you know this whole popular term for 2020. Like, I don't see color. I don't see color, and it's an honest role. Like, I don't see, like, everyone is the same, but as an African American, I need you to see me because when I get pulled over,
I didn't understand that.
It's not going to be the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
When I go into a store and I'm in sweatpants, they're gonna follow me around, and I need you to recognize that.
Totally.
You know, the same thing with women. Like, we need to open up our eyes and see people.
Yeah.
Like, we need to see color. We need to see gender.
Right.
So, Sam, for you, like, what would you kind of share from your perspective? Just a clue. You know, work for a company or just anything you kind of share in tech world. Like, what kind of clue would you kind of share that you learned to kind of help you in your journey?
I mean, this entire relationship is, and honestly, my experience at Element 3 taught me for the first time, I'd say, how important it is if you want to continue to be successful and continue to go after your dreams and things like that, is to take risks. And you know, it's harder for some people that have, like, what I'd say, like a lower risk profile. It's like, hey, just like, you know what I'm saying, I just like to keep it status quo. You know, I got my thing going. But taking risks doesn't just mean like risks in business, like leaving a steady job to go to a startup or something like that. I mean, that's definitely part of it, but it's also risk for relationships. So, I mean, anybody who's in a relationship or married knows how risky relationships can be.
Right.
And the question is, all right, I already took my risk. I'm married, you know what I'm saying? Like, why do I need to take risk with anybody else?
Yeah.
But it's important, you know what I mean? So I feel like with Tiffany, there was a moment where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to take a risk, lower my wall, and actually have some real conversations about the things that are bothering me. And I will say that there's you just got to be careful. Like, for folks that are listening, it doesn't always go the way it's gone for us. And there's a verse in the Bible I think about that talks about, it's dealing with the gospel, but it talks about putting your pearls out there, and then some, you know, if you put your pearls in front of the wrong people, they'll trample on them, and they'll trample on you. And your experiences, your vulnerability, all that kind of stuff that's precious to you. You're putting those pearls in front of somebody, and depending on who it is, they could trample on them and trample on you. And I've seen it in this exact kind of conversation happen over and over and over again. So you got to be very careful, and that's really what the risk is. But yeah, that's what I learned. It's like, if we wanted to be successful together, it required that risk.
Man, that's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. So real quick, where can they find you at? Where can they learn more about your company?
AfterSchoolHQ.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can follow us on Instagram, and we're on Instagram, LinkedIn. So please follow us, follow our journey.
That's amazing. Yeah. And Tiff, Element 3, where can they follow you at?
Yeah, I think the simplest way is probably to find me personally on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Tiffany Sauder, Sauder, or element3.com. We'll tell you all about the agency.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you both once again. I think powerful conversation. Man, I think a needed conversation. I think it's amazing how so quick we forget, like, you know, just a year ago what we were in, and now I feel like we have this whole racial fatigue again, where no one wants to talk about these topics anymore. But I don't think we're not going to progress to where we want to go unless we have these conversations. So I thank you both for having this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having the platform for it, Gary. It's important.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you for listening to Success Leaves Clues. Definitely tag a friend or share this podcast with someone that you think needs to hear it. And I think to Tiffany's point, man, I think Mother Teresa was the one that said it. Like, if you can't help 1,000 people, just help one. So we all can help one individual. And my question to you is, who would that one person be? All right, see you on the next episode. Y'all take care.